slowly but surely we're starting to figure out more and more about that situation with Kirk Cousins and what his future in Minnesota might look like. Even if there is a future in Minnesota, we're starting to get a little bit more information. That's because March is approaching, and that's when his contract officially becomes voided, and then we can really basically have these contract discussions full go, if you will. So let's get right into it. Where do we stand with Kirk Cousins and that quarterback situation for the Minnesota Vikings? Make sure to drop a like and subscribe before doing so. So let's get right into it. All right, now the million-dollar question surrounding the Minnesota Vikings this offseason is their quarterback, Kirk Cousins. With him set to hit free agency in just 3 weeks, the Vikings will have to make a quick decision on him. Now, the key dates for Kirk Cousins are March 11th, okay, which is when the legal tampering period begins, and March 12th, which is when Cousins' contract actually voids. He's no longer a Minnesota Viking on March 12th, I believe probably at like 3 p.m. Central Time, right? Now, in order to figure out what the Vikings will do, they need to have discussions with Cousins and his camp. Well, Sports Illustrated Albert Breer released his Monday morning column and talked about where things are at with the Vikings and Cousins currently. Here's what he said. Because of some creative timing in his contract, his current deal voids after the deadline to tag a player is passed. He's not eligible to get tagged. Both him and Daniel Hunter are both not eligible to get tagged this season. So we really don't have to worry about that whole situation. It's just basically, do we want to re-sign him and then kind of talk from there, right? Now, Cousins, like it said, can't be franchised by the Vikings, so all he has to do to become available to the other 31 teams is, well, do nothing contractually until March. At this point, it makes the most sense for him to do that. Now, the current Minnesota brass, now going into its third season, really likes Cousins, but it's also been made clear that they're not going to go contractually where the previous regime did twice and give Cousins a fully guaranteed deal. Now, absent that, Cousins is now in position to hit the market like he did 6 years ago. This time, older, and, of course, a little bit more injured. Now, absent that, Cousins is now in a position to hit, I guess we're right there. What sort of price Cousins will be able to command is another question, right? Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo did pretty well on the B-level market last year, as did Geno Smith. So something like $30 million would seem to be attainable. Is $40 million or $50 million or $45 million per year in reach? That's a good question. Okay, as far as it is, or as is how far the Vikings would be willing to go and keep Cousins, right? Now, for what it's worth, the Vikings did touch base with Cousins camp last week as they got their pre-combine meetings going. So the lines of communication are officially open. Now, more clarity could come in Indianapolis next week, which is when the scouting combine actually takes place, when all coaches and GMs and scouts are all basically in one place looking at the next, generation of NFL players. That's when these conversations could end up heating up, if you will, because there's going to be teams that are chomping at the bit to get Cousins. They're going to be asking questions, what is he like as a person and stuff like that, and I'm sure Cousins will be there as well. Now, the biggest piece of information here is that the Vikings have touched base with Kirk Cousins' camp, okay? When speaking about his contract, Cousins has spoken about how discussions would begin in March. Why March? Well, the scouting combine is the first weekend in March, and it becomes a bevy of tampering and information. By waiting until March, Cousins will have a much better sense of what other teams might be willing to offer, therefore strengthening his negotiation position with the Minnesota Vikings. Okay, so basically what that is saying is, hey, he's waiting until the scouting combine period to where teams are, where everyone is together, and they might start talking to Cousins and giving him, thoughts of, hey, we might want to offer you this or even maybe this and stuff like that. So it's like gaining, how do you want to say it? He's basically having more leverage over the Minnesota Vikings. He has more leverage with seeing what other teams are willing to pay him. If they're going to give him a fully guaranteed contract, are they not willing to give him a fully guaranteed contract? If not, then what's the amount of money? And then kind of see what the Vikings are offering and go from there, right? Now, we don't know how this is going to play out, especially with the money per year that Cousins will end up commanding coming off his torn Achilles tendon. However, the next 2 weeks will provide a lot of information on the subject. So currently right now, all we really know is we have talked to Kirk Cousins' camp about a potential extension or maybe what he's seeking out in the open market, what he might be wanting down the line in his future. We also know that the Vikings might not be willing to give him a fully guaranteed contract, which is basically what I assumed when we heard about his, the first contract leak just I think it was like a month ago or a month or so ago, when it was like, hey, Cousins' contract right now, I think you can kind of assume it might be a 2-year, $60 million deal with like 34.5 fully guaranteed. Right? So it's not a fully guaranteed contract, still a lot of money, still gives him a chance to make that full $60 million if he stays healthy and stuff like that and kind of go forward. That's the type of contract that I see the most plausible for Minnesota. I would like that contract. I'd be okay with that contract. However, when we heard that 2-year, $90 million contract fully guaranteed, I was turned off by it. I'm sure a lot of you guys were too, because it's time to look towards the future. And if Cousins is that guy, is 2 years the future? Is 3 years the future? Are we looking for a guy that can be here for 5-10 years down the road and then build the offense and defense around them? It's a very interesting situation right now, because multiple players on the Minnesota Vikings team, more specifically the wide receiver room, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, have basically said, look, we need Kirk back. They have said that. They have expressed their interest in Kirk Cousins coming back. I believe Jordan Addison was asked about Caleb Williams and what his thoughts are if Caleb ended up on the Minnesota Vikings. He said, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but it sort of seemed as if he was like, yeah, that's cool, but we need Kirk Cousins back. That's what we need. That's what this offense needs. And with the way it was going early on in the season, take away those first couple losses, Kirk Cousins was balling. He was putting up career year stats for him. Okay, not for other quarterbacks, but his best season by far at the start of this year. So it's a very interesting situation what the Vikings are going to have to do and the decision they're going to have to make. If it all comes down to it, sign Kirk Cousins, 2 years, $60 million, 34.5 fully guaranteed, and then you draft a quarterback in that second round, a successor to Kirk Cousins, to let him walk after these 2 seasons. And I know a lot of you guys are saying, hey, let's cut ties with Kirk. It's time to look forward. It's time to go get one of these younger guys in the draft. The only problem I have with that is, what if it doesn't pan out? Right? What if it doesn't work the way we hope it would work? What if it's a complete bust? Now you're thinking like, okay, if we kept Cousins and then have this guy learn for 2 years, or like a Patrick Mahomes learn like a half a year or a year and a half, whatever it was, and then put him in there, we might be in a little bit better shape, I think, going down the line into the future. But right now, all you need to know, Kirk Cousins and the Vikings camp have talked, okay? We won't know anything until the next couple weeks, about March 12th, when his contract voids, to see what other teams are willing to offer him, and then there's going to be a lot of negotiating. So that is when we're going to know what officially is going to happen. More information will start to pile up then. But until then, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment about this current situation, and subscribe to the channel. It'd be much, much appreciated. Have a great rest of your night, folks, and Skol Vikes.